So, hi everyone. I'm showing we're live on Facebook. I'm going to give folks a few minutes to find us before we fully launch in with our conversation. If you're here for the chat with Pasha Marlowe on her new book, you are in the right place.
Mm.
I'm just going to bounce this into a couple places while people are finding us. Pasha, how is the weather in Maine today?
Actually, today is lovely. It's warm. It's shorts weather here, which means it's over 45 degrees. 45 and up means shorts and no jackets. So we're on our way to spring.
Yes, we've had some pretty amazing weather here the last week, especially after, a couple very wintry weeks. So
Yeah.
it's been very, very nice. So if
Good.
you're here for the 5 o'clock live cast, you're in the right place. We're just giving folks a minute or two to find us. And then we are going to dive in for what is sure to be an exciting conversation. Okay. Looks like we got a few people with us live. If you do want to shout out in the comments where you're joining us from live, it's always nice to see where you might be here from. And throughout our live cast, if you have questions, if you have comments, please feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat, and I'll be monitoring that and trying to make this as interactive as possible while we're chatting together. So, I am very happy to introduce today. First of all, I'm Dr. Jamie Marich with the Institute for Creative Mindfulness, and I'm happy to introduce my friend, my comedy mentor, and now author, Pasha Marlowe.
Hey, I have that very same book.
Hey, who is the author of her debut book, and it really is, more than a book. I mean, a lot of her own story is in here. There's a collection of stories from women who, I mean, I know Pasha and I've kind of bonded over this label bisexual, yet there's just a lot of, I just like how it's worded as women finding their truth, women who were raised in a very heterosexual, heteronormative expectation and realizing, wait, that's not who I really am. It's probably not who I ever really was. And time to bust out of that shell. So it's just such a beautiful collection of stories. And I was very privileged to write the afterword. So,
I was so excited that you were willing to do that. And I love it. It really ties it together with a lot of nice research and wisdom. It's a beautiful ending to the book. Thank you.
right. So Pasha and I first met when I did a live cast for She Recovers Mental Health Monday about my own journey with the bisexual experience and how it has impacted my recovery, for the better, obviously, coming out and not being afraid of declaring who I am anymore. And we connected there, and was just happy to be very interactive around really all things bi visibility, queer visibility, and just helping women. I think is a common goal here, like you say on the cover, stepping into their truth.
Mhm.
So tell us about this title, because I know the titles cause some noise, both good and bad, or interesting, and like, what was the inspiration for the title? My next husband will be a lesbian. Where does that come from?
Every day I learn more, and now that I know better, I will do better. It has received some controversy. Some people in the LGBTQ community do have not appreciated even the wording lesbian next to husband. It's been tricky to navigate some of these conversations. The title came to me almost as a, sometimes I say a calling. It just kept coming up. Do you ever have a thought or a quote in your head, an image, and it just kept coming to my mind? And initially, in all honesty, it was coming to my mind in a comedic sense, or sometimes out of anger about the patriarchy, or anger about my first or second husband's affairs. It just was like, when I do this again, if I ever do this again, I'm going to marry a woman. My next husband will be a lesbian. It was said in almost jest at first,
Mhm.
but there was always truth behind it. So
Yes.
it was in me for maybe a decade. And anytime a coach or a friend challenged me to say what would be something really thrilling and scary to do, I would say something like, I'm going to finally write that book that's in me.
Mhm.
And the book was in me. Uh, Now that it's out, um, there's a lot of controversy about the title, and I obviously am going to stand by it because this was what was in my head, and a lot of people resonate with the title and have said the same thing.
Mhm.
out loud to themselves, to their friends, perhaps even to their husbands. But I do completely understand and honor that there's some confusion behind it. And that's actually, frankly, the message. Like, this is confusing and messy and awkward all around. You know, the bisexual experience is. And
Oh, yes.
but the
Oh,
title's messy too. The title makes no sense, nor does most of what I think, apparently.
I get it though. The first time you uttered it as a phrase, it just it sung to me because it's like I so remember having that cry out moment myself
Yeah.
where I don't know, I was probably in between marriages because you and I have both had, two marriages to men, and so I mean, I very much appreciate it having been there and then reading the poem because I would tell people appreciate the context of the poem because so much of Pasha's poem from which the title emerged is like, who the hell am I? What the heck, is any of this? And this is something that a lot of very confused bi women who are steeping in a lot of shame are stirring with. And we often face that phenomenon of foot in both worlds, not
Yes.
feeling queer enough to be accepted by queer people, definitely not feeling straight enough
Mm-mm.
to be accepted by straight people. And it's like, who are we? And we're likely to say stuff like this.
Yes. And it's absolutely true. I had the, optics of a of straight privilege before releasing this book and coming out. And I've even been told you can't come out if you're bisexual. You only come out if you're identifying as gay or queer or lesbian. And so I'm like, but wait a minute, I really do feel like I'm coming out into my truth. It feels like
Yes.
a big deal to me. And so in my coming out, which was all virtual and hardly anybody in three dimension knows other than my husband. It's been really interesting to feel celebration from many women and then a lot of pushback as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, are you comfortable talking about some of the pushback? And then
I will talk about all of it because it fascinates
I
me.
think you already have, and one of those things that can get uttered is, well, you can't really come out if you're bi. That is nonsense. I mean, I need to say here, and you can look this up, you can verify it clinically. Bisexual women have an even higher rate of suicidality, depression, and substance abuse than lesbian women or gay men, and that makes so much sense to me because of the foot in both worlds phenomenon. And I know we often get, well, you can pass and you have benefited from passing privilege and you can hide out, yet that is the source of so much pain that I
Yes.
think can lead to suicidality, depression, substance abuse.
Yeah, and I'll be completely transparent. That's where I was 2 years ago. The secret and the shame was killing me. It was haunting me.
Mhm.
And I didn't know where I would belong if I said it out loud. And I wanted to stay in my marriage. And I wanted to come out to the LGBTQ plus community and be accepted. And I was like, I'm so not going to belong in either world. And it's true. Now that I've come out, it feels that way even more. And in speaking my truth and in witnessing the other women in this book speaking their truths, we've released a whole lot of secrets and shame, and our bodies feel better for it, mentally, physically, um, spiritually. We're sleeping better. Our digestive systems are functioning better. Just across the board, there's been a lot of energetic release from the coming out in the book.
And you don't have to get into specifics, but tell me about just the nature of some of the contributors and how you met them and how you invited them to share their stories in this beautiful volume.
Yeah. In When the pandemic started a year ago, I, like many, read the book Untamed, and I saw in writing, maybe for the first time, a story of a woman who is Glenna Doyle, who was married to a man and realized that she was falling in love with a woman
Mhm.
and left, and she ended up leaving her marriage to marry Abby.
Mhm.
Um, I did not want to leave my marriage, nor have I ever, frankly, been with a woman. And by the way, that's more controversy. Like, you have no evidence to back up your claim. So how could you even call yourself anything other than straight? That's a whole other story. But it occurred to me at that moment that I really hadn't done the inner work that I needed to do on it. And I'm kind of a fierce entrepreneur in this sense. I decided to start a Facebook support group like that day that I figured this out a
Mm-hmm.
year ago. And I started this group called Bite Out of Life. And that's just a play on words with the BI in there. But also, like, let's take a bite out of life. Let's actually step into our truth. And in a safe container of these 50 women on this Facebook group, private, secret Facebook group, can we start to slowly speak our truths? And overnight, 50 women, by the way, joined. And we all started to talk about what it was like to be married in a heterosexual marriage, but have um, really relentless fantasies that were never said out loud, and made us feel like we were anything from broken to
Right.
dirty. There's books out there for folks like us, like things like Ethical Slut, and we couldn't even read the book because we're like, I'm not a slut, I'm a mom. I'm a menopausal mom who's never done, I don't do anything wrong. I play by the book. I'm not a slut. And it's like, it bugged us to even hear the words. And so we were stuck in this place of wanting to be held and wanting a sense of belonging, and the mommies in us, as well as the really devoted wives and kind-hearted, wholehearted women that we didn't feel like there was a space out there for us to share our stories. So the group turned into that, and I've made wonderful friends from it. And then slowly we started, initially we're like, I don't really know. I mean, I'm just curious. I'm not really anything. I'm just curious. I'm just here as an ally. I'm here just to be supportive. Maybe I'm fluid. Well, I don't really know what I'm called. I mean, maybe it's like bi-curious. And then just like month by month, more and more women were just identifying in different ways. And now the group is all along the spectrum. And there's women who have since a year ago left their marriages and now identify as lesbian. There's women who identify as trans. I mean, it's across the board, this wonderful, diverse group that if they didn't feel safe, and many of them live out of the country where it's illegal to be anything other than heterosexual. So it's been a beautiful experience. And so when I said I was writing the book, I was initially thinking I'd write it on my own. And then women were asking me whether or not they could contribute a story to me just to inspire my book. And then they started sending me the stories, and I said, this is beyond what I need to read. Other people need to read this. And so many of them are writing under nicknames or yeah. And I think half are using their full name. And they decided to come out in the book. Most of the women in this book, this is the first time they've written those words of coming out. There's a few exceptions, but for most, it's their coming out story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful moment when you do that, when you either say it out loud or you put it into print. I am just as I remember very clearly. So part of my journey is I I likely knew I was bisexual when I was about 10 or 11 because of who made my heart go pitter patter and people I did things with as a young preteen and all of this, but I couldn't even entertain in my head that I was bisexual or queer because I grew up in such a conservative home, and that would instantly mean like you lose your family. And it's like, no, it was just, I cut that part off of me. And then I believe it was when I was 19 when I fully said it to myself in my college dorm. Like I had my coming out to myself moment. I think as I was pleasuring myself thinking about a woman, because I think that's part of it too, that there's such a myth that you have to have actually been with a woman, as somebody who's previously identified as straight to call yourself bisexual. And it's so much more multifaceted than that. It can be, what kind of porn do you watch? Who makes your heart go pitter patter is how one teacher explained it to me once. And I really like that. And even Fritz Klein, the first psychiatrist to really write on this, was like, only you can identify
Yes.
sexuality and forget these labels that a lot of other people try to put on it. And it could be fluid over the lifespan, and so much of it has to. So and then after coming out to myself at 19 and maybe a few friends, I then and for me, coming out was not a one-time event, right? It was a work in process. Like it was first I had to come out to myself, then come out to people who were like in my closest circle. Both partners, both husbands I ended up marrying, I did come out to them before we got married. It's kind of like, just so you know. And, at the time it was like, hey, no big deal. And then it ended up, especially with the second one, being a big deal. That's another story for another cast. And I remember, like, just over the years, certain professionals in my world I felt safe enough with. I would be like, hey, I remember very clearly one person at a clinical conference one year I was talking with, she referred to herself as half queer. Like
Mm.
that's her identifier.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
speaking about her bisexual identity. And when she said that to me over a dinner at a conference, I'm like, well, I guess I would be too. And it just felt like this freeing moment to actually come out to a fellow professional. And so in 2015 is when I made the decision I'm going to be out fully. Like that, yes, I was out to enough people, and it wasn't exactly anything I kept a secret. Even as a clinical face and clinical professional, I would often talk about it if the space felt safe enough. But in 2015 is when I decided to do it at the Facebook level, like where my family could see it and write
Mhm.
about it in articles that were public. And that did require me coming out to my family. So, like, you don't see it on Facebook. And that was an odyssey. Yet, I say all this to say when one of my very dear friends, who's also, bisexual or pansexual, I'm not sure what word she's using these days, she said something like, Jamie, I'm proud of you for doing this, and I also want you to be aware as soon as you come out, your whole life's going to change. She said, I'm thinking for you, it'll mean you'll be indifferent to marriage. She was right.
Interesting.
She was absolutely right. So, yeah, I just think, coming out is it's so much more than one thing.
Yes.
Yet, at whatever point in your journey you come out, whether it's to yourself in writing, your life changes in some way. Is
It
that
does,
the
although it's
experience?
quite internal. It did nothing's much changed in the external. My parents bought the book. They found out on Facebook. Bought the book, read it. I haven't heard.
Congratulations.
I haven't heard any comments about it. I don't even know if my husband's read it. My kids were like, "Yay, mom! Hope you saw a lot of books." Could care
Yeah.
less about it. Netflix has known for a long time that I identify as queer.
Oh, because of your search history, right?
My search history exactly. And so I'm like, that's interesting. Every single movie or show I watch. And I'm the kind of person who will sit in a restaurant having a conversation with my husband. And if I see two women that appear to be a couple, I just am mesmerized. I'm just like, I think I took a turn somewhere in the fork in the road and was supposed to be there. And then I'll follow them around town and like watch them hold hands, and it'll give me this like
Longing.
heartache, but sense of knowing and desire.
Mm-hmm.
And so I listen to those little voices, and it's only I haven't even been out for a month now, and I haven't gone like my book signing, which might be like 3 people, is happening this weekend. I might sign it for the first time. It's all quite new, and so it feels vulnerable, and at the same time completely aligned, and I have no regrets.
Yeah.
I hope people are kind to my child in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
I hope people still invite us over for barbecues.
Mm-hmm.
I'm I have had no sex in 3 years. Like if the concern is that they don't trust me because apparently I'm oversexed because I'm bisexual and will steal all of their spouses, this is so not true. I do not.
Well, and you, so first of all, if you're just joining us or you've popped in, I'm speaking with Pasha Marlowe, who's the author and editor of My Next Husband Will Be a Lesbian, which is just a beautiful collection about the bisexual, pansexual, sexually fluid, sexually transition, sexual, uh, because I know there's a few stories in the book where women were culturally formed, as
Yes.
one contributor would say, to be straight and then realize that they are lesbian.
Yes.
So the bi label isn't necessarily what's appropriate. So if you have a question or a comment, please feel free to use it. We have one comment here. Great discussion. That was me 27 years ago. A wife and mother who realized she was gay. I left the marriage and soon after met my wife, who I've been with for over 25 years. Wonderful.
Awesome.
That's,
I love hearing those stories. And part of me wants to be in that place.
I know.
And more of me right now, and I'm just going to like honor where I am on every given day because it seems
Go,
to keep.
Pasha, go. You came out fully in a book, so
I'm I'm like 99% mothering my sick child. So I don't have all these opportunities to get out and explore.
and
Someday I might. Someday I hope I will.
yeah, and we're in a pandemic. So,
It's
and
like lethal. Yeah.
as you were speaking, another very important part, important part of this discussion came out. A lot of people over the years, especially in professional conference contexts, have spoken to me not knowing who they're speaking to because I was married to a man
Yes.
and they don't see me as queer in any way. And there was one moment in particular I remember when somebody in my professional community was just being very snide in talking about gay people, queer people in a very religious context, especially. And she had no clue that I was bisexual because I was not, it was actually a year before I was fully out. And
Hmm.
yeah, that gave me second thoughts about am I safe to be fully out, right? In my professional context. Yet I think, and I had this conversation with another friend of mine who also comes from a very conservative family, and she said, I have the privilege. I'm married to a man with kids where I can hide out and not have to out myself to my family. And she said, I can't do that anymore because they need to see that
Yeah.
these people they're talking about includes their daughter. And I'm always moved by Harvey Milk's advocacy, appreciating, of course, that people have to come out in their own way at their own time. On one hand, I agree with that. I mean, I definitely agree with that. And people should not be forced out of the closet. Yet the only way I think, I hate to use that word, the mainstream, but for lack of a better word, the mainstreams and moms and pops in our hometowns are going to realize, hey, this is not like the rare freaks we've thought it's everybody
Yes.
can be gay or straight or queer or bisexual, you name it. That
Yeah.
I don't know. I lose words sometimes when I talk about this, and I might get myself into trouble because I lose words and I miss labels and all of that. But
Well, the idea of me coming out and potentially liberating one of my own children to release shame about
yes.
coming out was enough. And I don't know if that is the truth or will ever happen, but I was like, that's enough. That's enough of a reason. Or perhaps I'm liberating another parent to then have a conversation with their child. And at the end of the book, we have a few conversation starters like, how do you talk to your husband about coming out? Or how do you talk to your children about coming out or sexuality in general? And that's been really eye-opening to me because I have received a lot of comments from people saying, I didn't realize people who I've received this comment. I didn't realize people who were so professional and ethical could also be identifying as queer. And I'm like, yeah, in fact so. And so there's some misperceptions out there. And if I'm busting through any of that, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And I think about you know, the musical Fun House.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. So I was the kind of person who would sit through these musicals and just like cry, like feel nauseous. Like I'm watching my truth and I can't speak it. And to feel so much connection and belonging with a character, such as the girl in that show in the musical, and her song "I'm Changing My Major" to Joan, where she sings about having her first female partner in college, which was a fantasy but never a reality for me, and then just leaving the theater feeling so desperately lonely, that I would never know what to do with these feelings and never have a place to express them, without losing my child. That's how I thought of it. Like, if I do this, I will lose my child, either through divorce or half-time custody. And that kept me from speaking my truth.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
yeah.
you for sharing that. And my wish to you is keep fighting the good fight. Keep speaking out, at the same time as doing your own work. Because I think when we're baby advocates in this area, it is important to keep listening to others, to keep working with our therapists or our people who are supporting us, so that we can look introspectively. Yet, I also know, and I've learned this, and this saddens me, but I really feel I have to say it, that some of the biggest fights I've gotten into about identity politics are within the LGBTQ plus community.
Mm-hmm.
Because people are coming from their own places with their own activations, with their own lived experiences. And I was very also interested, and I'll share with you all my story of where I got grilled once, and I held my ground on this. I'm so happy to hear you say that a lot of women who initially found the bite group said, well, I'm an ally.
Yes.
Being an ally is a lot of people's first step into
Yes.
coming out. And even when you come from conservatism of any kind, even that's a coming out. To
Mm-hmm.
say I'm an ally, to put, and yes, I know, and one of the fights I get into is that there are some facets of the LGBTQ community and circles who don't believe allies are a part of the community. And that just has always felt so gross to me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it's exclusive A, and I can see part of the point that a lot of people in the community find allies to be shallow. Like you can say I'm an ally and then don't really do any of the political work behind it and change your behavior. So I can get that there's more than just saying I'm an ally. Yet to like totally dismiss allies from the larger space of the community, I think is unfair, because a lot of allies are just people needing to come out
Yes.
themselves.
Testing the waters a bit.
And I've heard in response that, well, then they're questioning, and it's, but they might not even be able to say that yet. That
Right.
is, I'm here as an ally, and for conservative people, that can be a huge coming out in and of itself.
Yes, I've heard that story a lot where, as an ally, a strong ally, I would go to a college interview. And if I saw a flyer, this is long ago in 1988, I would see a flyer in the hallway that was homophobic. And then I was like, I told my dad, I'm not going to this school. They're homophobic. And he's like, well, what do you care? I said, well, I'm an ally. And so all the way back then at 18, I was like, this hurts me. And it was like, it felt like it was a humanity issue, a human issue, but there's probably more. It was probably my first step way long ago to finding my truth, but not even knowing it. I didn't even recognize it, frankly, for well,
And
50 years.
so often we don't recognize it. I love Katie's line in the book. My attractions were culturally formed.
Yes.
So right on.
Yes.
And I think that's what a lot of us are trying to break out from. So, again, thank you, Pasha Marlowe. My next husband will be a lesbian. I, again, am so honored to write the afterword for this. Just,
Can I say one more thing?
yes, go on.
Because on the cover, a collection of stories from women finding their truth. To say we went back and forth for months on whether or not we should spell women with an X was a conversation we had with so much intention on what the impact would be. And at the time of publication, only a short month ago, it felt like the most inclusive spelling possible. Since then, I've also had some eye-opening conversations that from people in the LGBTQ plus community who say, no, it's actually exclusive spelling. To which I say, I am just doing the best damn thing I can at the time, and I apologize if that is the impact. And I want to write a addendum and just say I'm still learning, as we all are, you know.
But to that point, I've seen positions both ways.
Right.
Women with an X. I personally like the women with a Y because it takes man out of the word woman. That's my inspiration for it. But I've also listened to a lot of trans women who have said it is exclusive to say that we're not women.
Not women. Yeah, I hadn't heard that until a few weeks ago after publication. So I was like, oh, but then there would have been equal amount of women saying you shouldn't.
Exactly. I think that's the key, Pasha. Are we willing to keep learning? Because something I've learned really about all of our discussions about diversity is the importance of cultural humility, which is defined by staying a student. Because if you've ever, whether you're queer identified, you're a member of the community, the LGBT plus community, whether you fancy yourself as this woke person, because we always say when you have to say you're woke, you're probably not, versus, hey, I'm here to learn. I'm a student. I can
Yes.
also learn more, even if I do identify as a sexual minority or a gender minority, or there's just so much here. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming out so publicly. I
My
mean,
first interview. How exciting.
I know you've been out to me and some others for a while, but I always appreciate when people are willing to take their vulnerability more public. So people can get the book, I assume, on the big bad Amazon. Is that the only place where we're selling it right now, or
Big Bad Amazon, but also Barnes and Noble and Books a Million.
nice?
Yeah. Um,
Doing a book
and I
signing?
have a box. I have a box of 40 of them in my house and nobody to give them to. So if you want a signed copy, send me an email.
And to that point, how could people get in touch with you about, like, I know you do a lot of different kinds of coaching and personal training and the Roar program, which I give a total shout out for. I did Pasha's Roar with Laughter program, which was my dip into comedic storytelling. And I'm actually starting my second comedy class tonight post what I did with Roar. So Roar helped me catch the bug. So how can people find you?
So good. And yeah, your musical comedy just thrills me. I can be reached at, you can go online to find me on website at pashamarlowe.com or email pasha at pashamarlowe.com. Facebook, Pasha Marlowe, Instagram, Pasha Marlowe, Clubhouse, Pasha Marlowe.
Great. People will find you. So,
Easy, easy.
and again, thank you. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie. Such a pleasure.